What's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in to another video. Back at it again with Inside the BCFC episode number 4, or we can call it week number 4, as we are in week number 4, already 1 month into the season in the British Columbia Football Conference. Exciting how time is flying by, as well as sad all in the same time. But that being said, folks, hopefully everybody is coming off a wonderful long holiday weekend here in BC, as we just finished up the BC, what is it, BC Day, I believe, BC Day long weekend here to go into the month of August, as 1 month of the summer is already down, as I mentioned, with 1 month of the season already down. Already July is in the rearview mirror as we look into and are in August, as the temperature starts to heat up outside. We start to enjoy the last little bit of summer ahead. Although I don't want to say last little bit of summer, like it's kind of dwindling as it is, but hopefully folks are enjoying it, taking the time to get out and, like I mentioned, enjoying the nice weather. I am coming off a wonderful, people might want to say call it a kind of a somewhat of a reset, a vacation. I was actually able to, being a island boy myself, was able to get away for the weekend, go over to the big city over in Vancouver, enjoy some much needed getting away time, and as I mentioned, reset, kind of get back to work, if you will, this upcoming week. And things are really going to be hot and heavy now with obviously the our Lions side of things with all of our coverage there. BC playing Hamilton this upcoming Thursday, and then of course I'll be making my broadcast debut this upcoming Saturday when the VI Raiders host the Valley Huskers. So, of course, if you guys are enjoying all the coverage so far this season, I apologize on the late upload on this week's episode, folks. As I mentioned, just coming off the long weekend, a little bit of a vacation. So this one's coming to you guys on, I believe it'll be Wednesday morning by the time this is uploaded to you guys. So if you guys are enjoying, please be sure to leave a like on the video, comment down below how you guys are feeling, and of course, subscribe to the channel. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell. It'll give you guys notification every time we post a video or go live on the channel. So, of course, you guys can find us on our social media platforms as well, at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram and at _CFNX on our Twitter account over there as well. We'll be sure to leave the BCFC's social media handles in the description below. As mentioned last week, things are going to be slightly changing, adapting here on the channel. We'll kind of just go on a week-to-week basis on how things go there, unfortunately. But it's all honestly all good. I think things are going to work out for the best, and hoping to provide some more player spotlights to you guys when they are able to come. But until then, we're going to kind of focus on these shorter Inside the BCFC episodes to make sure that we're pleasing everybody at the top. So let's get into a week 3 recap. We'll get into a quick one, seeing as that it was only 2 quick games on the weekend. It's a little bit of a different one, obviously, with the teams and the bye weeks and whatnot, going to squeeze all of them in. So you get some of these odd weeks when there's only 2 games. And as I mentioned, I was on vacation, so I was paying attention somewhat through my phone. But to be quite frank, to be perfectly transparent with you guys, I had off and on hit or miss service on Saturday. So it was nice to actually, as I mentioned last week, with only usually being able to maybe watch one game, or maybe the Lions are playing. Shout out to Blake Roberts, the BCFC YouTube people that handle that side of things, for getting up the games very quickly, and boom, they're on YouTube the next morning, and I was able to check out and rewatch some of them. Mostly the Valley Langley game, the Okanagan PG game, I was able to skim through a little bit. But as I mentioned, with me calling the game this upcoming weekend, I wanted to make sure I got a good up close look at the Valley Huskers as they're coming into NDSS Turf Field to take on the Raiders this week. So let's get into that game before we get into the next one. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be joined by a special guest here to chat about week 4 in the BCFC. So before we do, let's recap week 3, and then we'll be joined by our special guest as we leave that little bit of a cliffhanger for you guys. But he's a well-known contributor in the CJFL community. I would say the biggest contributor right now doing it. So some props to him. It's definitely a good conversation. So hopefully be had here on tonight's episode. But before we do, of course, we'll get into this recap. So let's start with the Langley Rams and Coach Barron getting their first victory of the season and Coach Barron's first career victory in his coaching tenure. So, shout out, snaps, kudos to Coach Barron for pulling that off. I believe that when we had Zion on and they mentioned with Coach Brian down there in West Shore, they will do the Gatorade shower. I believe Coach Barron got the same kind of treatment. I would imagine it's a very cool memory in the memory bank for Coach Barron and the Langley Rams and all the the leaders, the guys that were able to dump the Gatorade shower, the Gatorade cooler on Coach Barron, etc. I would imagine a very happy, proud moment for the program for Coach Barron. And it's hopefully, I would imagine for the Rams organization, they're hoping that this is a step in the right direction, and they're hopefully able to, stack some victories here and continue to go in the direction that Coach Cole would like them to go into. So when talking about this game, though, it was a very interesting game. I believe the Langley Rams are starting 3 straight weeks at home to begin their season. This being number 2. They obviously hosted the Okanagan Sun in week number 1, went into the bye week number 2, licked their wounds a little bit after the week 1 game to Okie, as most teams are, and came out maybe with a little bit of a little bit sleepwalking, a little bit of a lull. They end up leaving the first quarter down 17-3, I believe it was. It could have been 17-6, as I know it was the score at a point in time, but I believe it was 17-3 that the Valley Huskers very impressively kind of got out to a hot start, capped off by a Peyton Lake touchdown there in the first quarter. Off the top of my head here, I'll pull up the stats here quickly as I do it. I'm able to have them on hand. Yeah, it was a Peyton Lake touchdown there early on in the first quarter, and it was the blocked punt, scoop and score that was returned for a touchdown that started things off, got the ball rolling in the right direction for the Valley Huskers. They were also able to kick a field goal in their, I believe, 3 for 3 on their possessions in the first quarter, and jump out on the Langley Rams very early. Took Langley a little bit of time to get going, but as obviously with the score of this game and Langley coming out to win, they ended up being able to claw their way back to a very impressive comeback victory. I know personally with the, maybe our guest here in a little bit with our weekly picks, pick the Valley Huskers. I thought, I thought that they would be able to come out on the winning side of this one. That being said, very impressive job by the Langley Rams, as they were dealing with some maybe question marks going into the game at quarterback with Polina Hooper, their starter going into the season, going down with a little bit of a maybe a tweak or a little bit of a minor injury, I guess you could maybe say. He ends up leaving that week 1 contest. Hunter Norman ends up coming to the game, finishing that game for the Langley Rams, and obviously, as I mentioned, going into the bye week, probably a good time for an injury like that to your starting quarterback. Polina is able to rest, recover, get back to, I would imagine, probably not 100%, but as close to 100% as unfortunately in the season you're just not able to do so. And it was able to start this contest, was able to lead his team to victory. As I mentioned, a little bit of a slower start for Hooper at quarterback, but overall he was able to come out with the victory for his team. Was able to be a spark plug, I think, at times for his team. A modest 18 of 15. 8 of 15, 112 yards passing. I think some timely, throws there where he was able to move the chains, keep his offense on the field, extend drives. So the good thing, I think, that if you are, playing a Hooper, you are Hunter Norman, you're really hoping that you're able to, lean on that run game, allow that run game to kind of establish your offense, set up that play action, set up your passes downfield, and really feed off that run game, with guys like Reggie Ellie, obviously, and Bruce Jones running the ball. I think it was a quieter day for Bruce Jones, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been other way around, excuse me. Reggie Ellie was a little bit of a quieter one where, 14 carries, 34 rushing yards, the 1 touchdown. When you look at Bruce Jones, 16 for 72, very productive when Bruce Jones' number was called upon. Bruce Jones, both running backs in this game, actually, we'll talk about Jawad. My apologies to Jawad as well. I wasn't able to talk about him last week, or actually I wasn't able to. I just kind of slipped my mind, honestly. Jawad, I believe, started out the season just under 100 yards. Jawad, Bruce, some of my favorite running backs to watch in the conference over the past few years, especially last year. Going into this year, had high hopes, high expectations for both backs. So I think good things are going to happen for both offenses when each team, each coordinator. I know Coach France, I know Coach Reese will not shy away from that from those two guys. And number 0, Joanne Harb, number 1 in Reggie Elliott, number 28 in Bruce Jones. So for the Langley Rams, taking your business at home is a huge opportunity for them to handle their business. As I said, their defense able to pretty much shut the door after the first quarter, only give up the 2 points after that point. So really good job on the defense for 3/4 of the day, doing a very good job on limiting what they were able to give up defensively. When you look over to the Valley Huskers, who I would imagine will be a little bit disappointed on this one, with Jawad Harb, as I mentioned last week, just under 100 yards in the 13 yards that I guess felt like a little bit more, to be quite honest. I would like to know if this was corrected or not. But the 10 carries for 13 yards for Jawad Harb. He also had 2 pass receptions for the 26 yards. And maybe that's where I'm thinking maybe he had those extra few yards coming in from. A quieter day for Jawad Harb, I would imagine. Not even I would imagine. A quieter day just in general for Harb, as I mentioned. I would expect him to be very motivated, very hungry going into week number 4 to get back in the right direction. Other than that, Keyshawn Dorsey has been, impressive at times for sure. I think he's still getting used to the Canadian game. Once again, being a very big dual threat, utilizing his legs, utilizing them as a weapon. Last week, I believe he was just under 100 yards rushing. I think it was 96. This week, 73 rushing yards on 14 carries. Not afraid to tuck it and run it when he can. The passing numbers, although you'd like to see probably a better completion percentage, get some of these completions or get some of these attempts to be completions. He finished 9 completions for 29 attempts, 196 passing yards for 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And of course, as I mentioned, Peyton Lake, a familiar face around the BCFC for a number of years, was able to get back into the paint again for his first touchdown this season, just under 100 yards for himself, receiving 3 receptions, 91 yards, and the 36-yard touchdown on the afternoon for him. I believe that's basically it from this game, as we will transition here to the next one very quickly. Let me pull up my email, though, as there was some corrections to the stats. So let's the Okanagan Sun 35-11 victory over the Prince George Kodiaks, where this was one, oh boy, this was in the middle of the day. I believe kickoff was 4 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. And one that I was, as I mentioned, a little bit busy paying attention. I was actually, to be transparent with you guys, for everyone that probably is in BC that knows it or aware, I was actually at Cultus Lake water slides and enjoying myself in off and on the water slides. I'm going back and forth and checking my phone, and the first time I do, I get an update and check the BCFC Instagram. 11-0 Prince George jumps all over the Okanagan Sun at home. Was a very eye-opening one, and actually right away I get on the on my phone and I texted, actually, shout out to Blake Roberts once again, was bugging him for, hey, can I get the BCFC TV pass for this week? I actually forgot to remind him to grab it. Wanted to throw it on my phone. As I mentioned, I was trying to throw it on my phone, but just with the service and it being not very great out there, was pretty hard to do. And of course, wanting to enjoy my time, I was going back and forth. So just the odd time I was going back to dry off or what it may be, grab some food. It was just, unfortunately, the service was kind of loading and buffering more so than anything. So it was something that I was very intrigued to see what was happening. What was Prince George doing? Was it some turnovers? What was going on? Going back and getting a look at it was nice to kind of fill in some of those blanks. So when talking about that, so the Prince George Kodiaks, very impressive drive by quarterback Sawyer Thiessen, able to get on the board early on that Okanagan Sun defense, who is and I don't want to be too, I guess, hyperbolic. I don't know if that's the right word, but too hot take-ish or too clickbaity when I say and it's funny because I say on the weekly show last week with some of the fellows that I do the CFL weekly show with, of tune into the Okanagan Sun defense. You're not going to be disappointed, and I kind of made some pretty confident claims for the Okanagan Sun defense, and of course it's 11-0 after the first quarter. Wondering what's going on, right? And of course, as I mentioned, to go back and fill in some of those blanks, what was happening, as I said, Sora Thiessen was making some beautiful throws in that first possession there early on. If I'm not mistaken, it might have been the second one. He was able to lead the Kodiaks on a touchdown scoring drive, and was capped off by the Brown connection from Thiessen. And as I mentioned, with Sora Thiessen, who's been I would say a pretty good game manager here so far through 4 weeks here early on. But I've had a little bit higher expectations of Thiessen. I think there's another level for him to get to, and I think when he gets to that level, which he will, like I mentioned, I've seen him play like that in the past, last season. His pedigree coming from U Sports. I think the Kodiaks will definitely be able to contend, be competitive, win some of these ball games, as I mentioned already, with them jumping all over the Okanagan Sun early on. If they were able to continue and kind of play at that level for the rest of the game, I think this would have been a very interesting game to go back and watch. But just kind of more kudos than anything, and more, I guess, expectations on Thiessen of the player that I think he is, and excited to continue to watch Thiessen. Honestly, I think he is a quarterback that is a good leader, and I hate kind of saying leader of your franchise when it's maybe not looked at like that, but leader of your program, leader of your organization is probably the best way to put it. A guy like Sora Thiessen who leads by example. So when talking about the Okanagan Sun, I mean, you have to just admire their dominance. When you look at 11-0 Prince George jumps out all over them. 35-11 final score, 35 unanswered points. The defense donuts from that point out after the first quarter, and they continue to dominate on multiple aspects, taking the football away, getting to the quarterback. When you look at Jaquintus Summers, Jarvion Williams additions that were looked at very highly and talked about with high expectations coming into the year, they're fulfilling their end of the bargain times 10. And you look at a veteran like Hunter Bolsma, he's come in, done his job as well. When you look at top 5, sacks leaders, shout out to, Wiz putting this together. Jaquintus Summers, Jarvion Williams, 10 sacks combined in 3 games. Jaquintus with 6, Jarvion with 4. You look at Hunter, who was already at 3 as well. 13 sacks combined for the 3 of them in 3 games. It's just dangerous stuff for opposing teams, as well as just a recipe for success if you're the Okanagan Sun, right? Where you're able to be strong on both sides of the football, whether that be the offensive line or the defensive line. So shout out to the defense as they continue to dominate on all aspects, taking away the football. Last week, obviously, they had the 4 interceptions. This week, they're all over the quarterback. And of course, you'd have to talk about the offensive side of the ball as Jaron Hardesty, Offensive Player of the Week this week in the Bcfc, continues to have a strong season. He is over the 200-yard mark rushing versus the Kodiaks on Saturday. Very impressive, showing workload as well. 28 carries for Jaron, as well as he had a couple of receptions for, I want to say 60 or so yards or something like that. Was a big part of the offense. To be expected, has been all season for the Okanagan Sun. As I said, the 28 carries, 200 rushing yards, 68 receiving yards was a big afternoon, a very impressive outing for one Jaron Hardesty. When you talk about, obviously, the Okanagan Sun offense, you have to mention QB1 and Liam Kroger, who has continued to be impressive, kind of similar to Sora Thiessen. He's been a game manager, making sure that he takes care of the football. Let me just make sure that I go to let's bring up his let's make sure that Jaron's was 28 carries for 206. He also did have the 2 receptions for 64 yards. And as I mentioned, Liam Kroger, 11 for 20, 123 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Very modest afternoon, but did his job, right? Took care of the football, didn't turn it over, was able to put his team in position to, move the chains, get him into field goal range, get him into scoring range into the red zone, and let his playmakers cap it off, let his defense do the job as well, and stuff like that. So I believe that is all for our week number 3 recap. And we are going to be joined here momentarily by one Wizard Takes. Surprise, surprise, folks. Wanted to get Wiz on as as I mentioned, he's the best in the business right now. I can be fully transparent about that with his following, his work, um, and what he does, everything he does for not only the CFL but obviously the BCFC, and very thankful for somebody like Wiz, and maybe getting a little bit soft, some might say, for Wiz here, but to be quite frank, to be quite honest, for people that maybe give him a hard time, this is something that I would have loved to have, when I played. So shout out to Wiz continuing to do all that he does in the CGFL, because it is needed to spotlight these athletes as they are playing at a very high level. So without further ado, that is week number 3. Let's get Wiz in here to chat about week number 4 in the BCFC. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thankful to be joined by the man himself, the Wizard. Going to be joined by the Wiz for about maybe 15, 20 minutes and just quickly chat about this upcoming week's slate of games in week 4 in the BCFC. So, Wiz, as I mentioned, buddy, thankful for you joining and taking a little bit of time out of your evening. How we doing, bud? Oh, Wiz might be having a little bit of some technical difficulties. Let me see if I can. My apologies, everybody. Hopefully, you guys didn't hear too many of the technical difficulties going on behind the scenes. But as I mentioned, very thankful to be joined by the man himself, the Wiz, tonight, to be breaking down all the matchups this upcoming weekend in week number 4 in the BCFC. So, Wiz, how are we doing, buddy? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing fantastic. Very grateful to be a guest on the show. You've been doing a great job covering BC so far.
I appreciate that, buddy. I'm sure you'll go back and watch, as I know the big fan that you are. I was actually giving you a little bit of your flowers. I know that we've had I feel like an up and down relationship. I was, as I mentioned, giving you your flowers because I do really admire and respect kind of the grind that you are on, and as I was saying, kind of just like I really wish that we had pages like you when we were playing football. So, as I said, buddy, I know our relationship maybe hasn't been the best at times, but I really admire what you're kind of putting together, and I enjoy the coverage. So, as I said, I wanted to kind of chat about the week 4 matchups, and I know that you're a big Okanagan Sun guy. So let's start with matchup number 1 with the
The
Okanagan
orange
Sun.
when you think I'm a Sun guy?
the orange behind you tells me otherwise. But Okanagan Sun West Shore Rebels matchup on Saturday, 4 o'clock. I believe this is the in Langford down in Langford. What are your thoughts overall? Give a little bit of mine.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this game. I mean, it's the biggest game in BC so far this season, the biggest game in the CGFL. I mean, they've been in the last 3 Cullen Cups, I'd like to say, and they were all super tight games. I think they played 3 times last year, all super tight. Now, there's been some turnover on both teams, of course, but I mean, both of them have been firing in all cylinders. I mean, Okanagan, I know there's talks after the first 2 games that they're unbeatable, that they might not allow a point, but then you see what PG was able to do, and yeah, Okanagan did end up running away with it, but then you kind of see, well, Okanagan's beatable, and they're beatable, and you see West Shore, they got a superstar QB. I mean, Gavin Session, he's been lining up. They got Zion Brown, they got Carter Williams, they got an O-line, they got some young guys. They're a real threat on offense. And you've seen a little outside of Jaron Hardesty, you'd like to see a little more out of Okanagan. So you could even argue that West Shore potentially has the edge on offense. But then when you look on defense, that's when Okanagan signs. I mean, that front 7, even without Jacob Bond, is absolutely phenomenal. They're unreal. The back end, amazing. They're going to be a tough out. I'm really looking forward to, obviously both sides, but specifically that chess game between the West Shore offense and the Okanagan defense.
My apologies, Wiz. I'm actually glad that that's where you transitioned back to me. We didn't actually chat about this, but that's kind of what I had all eyes on going into this game with the Okanagan Sun defense. I was just chatting about doing the recap there of between the 3 of DeQuintis, Jarvion, and Hunter. I believe they have 13 combined sacks already. So obviously all eyes on that Okanagan Sun defense. But when you look at the flip side and that West Shore Rebels offense, the names you already mentioned with Gavin. Zion, obviously Carter in the backfield, but one that kind of broke out last week when they the host of the Valley Huskers, obviously the Tyrell Hofflin as well, another weapon for that West Shore Rebels offense to utilize, and it's going to be a fun matchup, I would imagine. I'm excited. This is going to be a little bit of a difficult one for me to kind of tune into for the entirety on Saturday, as obviously as I mentioned, Liz, I'll be calling the game Saturday night. So this is going to be one that I'm going to be really looking forward to Sunday morning to kind of get a little bit of a rewatch. So is there anything else that kind of comes to mind for you on this game, Wiz, or should we get to the Langley Kamloops game?
Yeah, well, I'm sure you talked a lot about what I'd have to say because you're pretty in tune with the conference very well. But I think I'm really interested to see in how the chess battle, the coaching is going to go because Connor Bryan through 2 games, he's been fantastic at managing the game, getting the guys motivated. I was a huge fan of him before he took over as head coach, and he's done a phenomenal job. But he's really stepping into a huge game like Travis Miller. You see in every big game, this guy's rarely out coached. I looked to the 2 games in Regina where he's going into Regina, hostile environment in the cold against a guy like Scott McCauley and the Regina Thunder, always execute 100%. And the way he's able to manage the game, and always, I mean, even last season you saw the Sun, no matter what, even when they're out, they're always just able to find a way to win. So, and West Shore is right there last season. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to go, and I'm really interested to see how Gavin Sessions going to do, because as good as PG and Valley are, Okanagan's a whole different beast, and he's still a young quarterback in the Canadian game. He does have experience down south, but in the Canadian game, going against the Shane Beatty defense, this is really where we're going to see what he's made of and what he could do. And if he has a big performance, that might be lights out for the conference. It's really going to be interesting to see, I think.
I think the conference as a whole is still kind of waiting for that maybe number one guy. Gavin through the first few games has maybe kind of put his hand up in terms of like being the best quarterback in the conference. But as you mentioned, maybe with a performance on Saturday where Gavin's able to propel his team to victory, maybe that's where he cements himself as the best quarterback in the conference. So definitely a lot of things to play for on Saturday. I like that you mentioned the quarterback or the coaching matchup, right? And you obviously kind of alluded to it with Coach Beatty running that defense. Anytime the West Shore Rebels are involved, obviously with his ties to the organization, the program, kind of a little bit more implications come into play. So, Wiz, when moving on to the next game, what are your thoughts with the Kamloops Broncos traveling to take on the Langley Rams at McLeod Athletic Park?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Langley, they did pull away with the victory last week, but that defense looks to be. I mean, they look to be, especially the front seven. They look to be the real deal. I mean, they held Hardseat only. I'd have to double check the stats, but I'd like to say it was like 72 yards, which I mean is containing him. Then Jawad Harp had absolutely nowhere to go. I think he had like less than 15 yards. So that front has been outstanding. I don't know how much Kamloops is going to be to get on the ground. So they're really going to have to lean on that air attack. And obviously got Colt Meikle there, but I mean, the Rams are no slouch at DB. They got some absolute ballers out there. And going into Langley, I know Langley, they have a tough schedule, and no offense to Kamloops, but they view this as a winnable game. I expect a big performance from the Langley Rams. I know they had a tough draw opening up against Okanagan with a pretty young head coach, but I don't think that tells the whole story. I think Langley easily could make a case for being the second best team in the conference. I fully expect them to take care of business this week against Kamloops.
Yeah, and when you talk about that defense for the Langley Rams, right, and obviously an opposing team coming in, they're going to be coming in with, I would appear it's going to be Chase Wenzel at quarterback once again. The obviously the rookie quarterback up there for Kamloops. I know there could be some rumblings and opposed to maybe a new different quarterback coming in outside of conference, but maybe we'll save that for another show. Unless maybe Wiz, you do want to talk about it, Wiz, so feel free, buddy.
Well, we'll see. There is some rumblings that maybe by the time this episode's released it will be announced, but I think it'll make a big difference for Kamloops with this quarterback they're getting.
Yeah, for sure. As I mentioned, with just fortunately for Chase, I think he's learning some valuable lessons on the fly, but also with his young experience, he's also kind of, I feel like, maybe learning the hard way at times. So with maybe a veteran being able to come in and kind of maybe give a different viewpoint to that offense, maybe get guys like Colton going. Obviously, Miko got his first touchdown last week, but able to get him some more opportunities throughout the game. I think getting the ball in his hands is only going to get give them a better chance to win. So interesting one from the Kamloops side of things. When talking about the Langley Rams, I would like to see them, talking about offensively. I know they're kind of really and having a little bit of relationship with Coach France, understanding a little bit of his mindset of wanting to really lean into that run game, really kind of be the identity of their offense. I feel like at times they almost somewhat go away a little bit from Bruce. Bruce Jones is who I'm talking about, obviously, and they do have a very quality back in Reggie Elliott as well. But looking at this past Saturday, I believe Reggie was the one that took, I believe, got the touchdown. But I think, modest game. I think he was about 16, 17 carries, something like that, for about 50 or 60 yards. Bruce Jones, on the other hand, I believe just was under 100 yards. Was kind of that. I feel like that spark plug for the Langley Rams offense, and I think not a bad problem to have as well for the Langley Rams, right? Where you're able to lean on two backs like that, especially when obviously was kind of with the your ties to the prairies there when it comes to October, November football. It's a good quality to have when you're able to lean on two running backs. So a good problem to have for the Langley Rams, but I think you also only have one football to give the guys to, so one guy's also on the sideline at times. So is there any other thoughts for you, Wiz, when it comes to this matchup?
Yeah, I just want to say I think Chase is going to be a great quarterback for Kamloops. I mean, he's already shown he has the potential, but being a rookie against the teams he's played, it's tough. It's tough. So with the veterans back there, and he's kind of just thrown into the fire with a lot of injuries. I think he's going to be fantastic. But I agree with a lot of what you said about Langley. Even like looking stats wise, they kind of struggled to run the ball despite those two good running backs. So I feel like this might be an opportunity to really get those guys going. And I know there's actually a third guy in the mix. I can't remember his name, but he did pretty decent when given the chance. And their quarterback, I mean, he's decently mobile too. So I feel like they're going to lean on the running game, and it has the offense has kind of been behind compared to their defense this year. So I feel like this is going to be the game where we see if their offense is going to be able to pick it up, and if they can be there to help them, because without the pick six, that they might have been in a losing game. So their defense has really been carrying the load. I'd like to see a little more of their offense this week.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get to the last game of the week, and we'll get you out of here, Wiz. Appreciate you once again, dude. I know it was a little bit of last minute as well. So, as I mentioned, I'll be making the broadcast debut. Wiz, hopefully you'll be not be keeping that $25 in your wallet, and you'll be willing to pay on Saturday night to tune in to the contest. It should be a good one. Taking my bias out of it, obviously, as you know, being an alumni, but also calling the game. I'm really excited to call the game from both vantage points, both teams, needing victories, right? Valley, I would imagine, feels very probably pissed off if they let that slip out of their hands. Probably could have been a victory for them. When you look at, obviously they lost down in West Shore to start the season. So two, fairly, I know the West Shore game was maybe a little bit of a lopsided one when you look at the scoreboard, but two fairly winnable games. When you look at that first half, it was a very tighter contest. The West Shore Valley one last week. Obviously, they jump out to a 17-3 lead after the first quarter. So Valley has showed flashes. I talked a little bit about it before you jumped on here. I've seen moments from Keyshawn Dorsey at quarterback. I don't think he's put it all together now for a full complete 60 minutes, but there has been some signs, some flashes. And I think he's maybe getting used to that. Obviously coming from U Sports, the kind of the system being directed around him, right? The playbook, the scheme, all that sort of stuff. So hopefully, as time goes forward, the season goes along for Valley purposes, that he starts to be able to find the end zone through the air. I know he's also chipped in with I believe it was 96 rushing yards in week one. I think he had like 70 rushing yards this past week. So definitely going to be a factor and something to keep an eye on if you're the Raiders defense this upcoming week. When you look at the Raiders, obviously a tale of two games, right? When you look at they started the year playing Kamloops. And then Okanagan 2 weeks ago, they go into the bye, and I would imagine it would have been a pretty big sour week for them to look at the film and unfortunately be honest with themselves, right? Look in the mirror of what what went wrong up in Okanagan. I would imagine they felt they could have Kept things a little bit closer than the final scoreboard indicated. But that being said, Wiz, what are your kind of thoughts on this matchup when talking about the Valley and VI game?
Yeah, I think you hit it pretty well. I mean, I know you're a VI alumni. You're calling the game, so you're pretty entwined with VI. So I won't talk too much about them because I'm sure we already talked about but from Valley's side, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think Keyshawn Dorsey, he might be the most. I might want to say it, he might be the most talented quarterback in all of the CJFL. I mean, he has it, but like you said, he just hasn't been able to put it together. I mean, I haven't seen in BC. I mean, he's clearly the most mobile guy. I mean, some guys I've been talking to are describing him. He's like another running back out there. He's tough, and he's got a huge arm, and he's made some unbelievable throws in the games. But the accuracy at times, I think he was like 9 for 29 or something. Like that's just not going to get it done. But he has all the tools there. So I wouldn't be surprised for any given day if he goes for 500 total yards. I mean, he has the weapons. He's got Peyton Lake. He's got Trey White from Manitoba. He's got Jawad Harb. He's got a good old line. It's all there. Really just depends if they're going to be able to click. So I'm really looking forward to this game because, like you said, both teams desperately need a win. Valley desperately needs a win. You can't start 0-3. I know they do have a little bit more of a favorable schedule down the stretch, but starting 0-3, that's just a tough hole to climb. And I know VI, they they think they have a chance for the playoffs, and we both think that they have a really good chance for the playoffs. So this is going to be, a game that, they prove it. They beat Kamloops, week one. They're kind of a team that wasn't really expected to do much. Then they got spanked by Okanagan, where that's, I don't want to say it's what you expected, but Okanagan's a tough out. This is a game where I think it's really going to tell is VI for real. Are they going to be the team that's going to be right up there with the elite competing for the playoffs, or they kind of be, on the bubble. So I'm really looking forward to this game. Unfortunately, I got obligations this weekend, so I won't be able to catch it. Unfortunately, I was really hoping to catch your debut, but we got other stuff going on. But I think it's going to be a fantastic game. We're obviously going to be rewatching and posting the highlights. But I think this, especially the West Shore Okanagan game and this VI and Valley game, two of the best games of the season, and it's really going to, we're really going to see how, what I think how the season's going to unfold for the rest of the year with these two games.
Yeah, I think when talking about, I'll talk about Valley quickly here before I get to VI. Context matters, I think, a little bit for Keyshawn when you talk about obviously last week. Would definitely like to see him up that completion percentage. I talked a little bit about it in our recap. When you talk about week one, and I think some of the struggles that came there, I think we're a little bit more acceptable when you look at, I talk about the context right of the game. I believe West Shore opens the game with, the opening kickoff. They end up taking it back to the house. And then unfortunately for Valley, they end up losing a player to a pretty significant injury, pretty substantial delay in the game. I believe it was about 40, 45 minutes delay. And that could really, especially for a guy that's getting his first start in the CJFL opposed to U Sports, right? It's a totally different thing of, different players around you, different scheme, as I mentioned. That could maybe throw you off in terms of your rhythm, in terms of just how you're feeling going into the game. So, as Wiz said, right, a very talented guy, arguably maybe one of the talentedest quarterbacks around the country when it comes to the CJFL, but just hasn't put it all together yet. So maybe this is the week, maybe this is the game for him to display that. So when talking about VI, I agree with basically everything you said as well. If they want to be legit, if they want to be the team that they were kind of hyping up going into the season, this is the game you got to win, right? Of maybe you want to spin things if you were to lose, say a close game or even lose in general, right? Of we'll see them again, or you can win another game. These are the games that last year when I believe they finished was it 3-5 or 4-6 or whatever, where they lost the Okanagans, they lost the Langleys, and they thought oh well, we can get them again next season, or we can get them again later in the year. That paid very costly, right? Of they missed the playoffs by 1 or 2 games at the end of the year. Losing this could mean missing the playoffs by 1 or 2 games, as you said, with Valley already being 0-2. They don't want to fall to 0-3. VI can't allow Valley to be the more desperate team on Saturday. I think for VI's sake of even their playoff hopes, they have to come out and play like the more desperate team on Saturday. I think they will. I would imagine Coach Rabskill has them very motivated, ready to go. I'm actually going to go to practice after we get off here, Wiz. So excited to see how the team's looking after bye week and how motivated they are on the field. It's going to be interesting to see. As it's gonna be a fun one. I'm juiced because I'm on the call, obviously, but I'm even more juiced to kind of get an up close personal look at the team this year as they've been on the road 2 weeks to start the season. So, Wiz, man, I appreciate you. Number one, keep killing it, keep doing your thing as we need it in the CGFL. But before we get out of here, for those that maybe are living under a rock, if they don't know where we can find you on Instagram, all that good stuff, let the people know.
Yeah, so you could follow me at Wizard Takes. I'm sure most people already know about me, and if they're not following me, it's probably by choice. But I would also like to shout out the Ontario Football Conference. I'm working with them. I'm helping running the social page. I can't remember what the at is exactly. I'd like to say it's
I'll throw it in the description for you, Wiz.
yeah, because that'd be nice because we're really trying to um, up our social media in Ontario. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really love what you're doing at BC. We're tuning in every week to the show. I mean, it's fantastic. It's it's great. It's great for the league having all sorts of different voices and different people getting involved through all lenses. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, buddy. Like I said, big kudos to you. I can't help but tip my cap to you just because I understand from a behind the scenes perspective, I guess you could say, right, of like everything that goes into running a social media platform. I know you do a little bit of the YouTube as well, and it is, and I feel like people think maybe it's just like a snap of fingers and you can kind of, and I know it is a little bit easier when you get the templates and whatnot together and you can kind of do it a little bit faster, but it's not a easy thing, especially I know you're a student, I believe, still, and I know it's summer break. So, but like I said, buddy, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but very big appreciation for all the work that you do for the not only the conference that we're covering here in BC, but the country as a whole, dude. So keep on doing your thing, and obviously we'll talk soon. We got some picks to discuss about here in the chat in the coming days. I'm interested to see what happens.
Well, I'm the leader for once. I know I was behind all year last year, so I gotta make sure I keep my lead because that's pretty rare the way I pick.
Yes, I agree, and you do go on a limb sometimes, so I got to give you even more of a kudos, buddy, for going on a limb and landing on your feet on that one. So it is an interesting one, as Wiz was just alluding to there. If you guys aren't aware about checking out our picks throughout the week, or excuse me, throughout the season, Wiz and a few other contributors go throughout the weeks and give our picks. And obviously, we aren't perfect, as last week we were proven wrong. So it's a good, fun debate, just not only to kind of prove that we're maybe the smartest, but just to get some conversation going. Start that debate. Start. I would imagine Wiz knows quite well of the receipts that people have and wanting to come back in the comments and try to see. I told you, it's all in good fun. It's all to generate conversation. I would hope that you're able to maybe get some motivation from it. And as I mentioned, it's all in good fun, all to generate some buzz for the conference, for the fantastic athletes on the field. So, Wiz, once again, buddy, I appreciate you for joining us, and we'll chat soon.
Sure, take care, man.
Alrighty, everybody. Appreciate Wiz for joining me. Let's put an end to week number 4 of Inside the BCFC here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. If you guys tune in, hope you guys enjoyed. Please be sure to leave a like on the video, comment down below how you guys are feeling about last week's action, as well as how you guys are feeling going into week number 4 of the BCFC here in BC. As I said, the weather is starting to get nice, although today was actually a little bit of a gloomier, cloudy one. The weather is starting to heat up, and the football here in Canada is starting to heat up as we have not only the CFL in full swing, just at the halfway point as we are into week 10. The BCFC is into the swing of things now. The OFC and PFC kick off this weekend. U Sports is around the corner. So, folks, there's no shortage of football here, not only in BC, but in Canada. And I would extremely, 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 extremely encourage you guys to consume. Obviously, the NFL is awesome, and I am a big NFL guy myself, but I feel like it is such a big duty to myself, and I don't even know if I say big duty, but I feel like I not I feel like it's the right word, but I just feel like it's so important for Canadians to support Canadians, especially with the day and age that we are in. I'm not even gonna get into politics and all that sort of stuff. So let's steer this conversation this way. Um, the day and age that we live in, with the talent of athlete that we have uh, playing not only football up here in Canada, you name it, basketball, soccer, whatever it may be, Canadians are starting to become world class at those sports, and it's been fantastic to watch, support. I think football is at, you could argue, its peak now, with Canadians going into the NFL, Canadians at the top of the CFL, Canadians coming out of the Bcfc, OFC, PFC, out of the CJFL into the CFL, and as I mentioned with youth sports as well, youth sports players going down to the NFL, you name it. So get out, support your local athletes, as I mentioned, for week number 4 in the BCFC. You guys can find a game at West Shore down in Langford at West Hills Stadium. West Hills Stadium. Why do I keep saying that? Starlight Stadium. I have no idea why I said that earlier. Well, I said that in the start of the episode. Starlight Stadium down there in Langford, as the Okanagan Sun take on the West Shore Rebels this upcoming Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific. Next is the Kamloops Broncos traveling down to McLeod Athletic Park to take on the Langley Rams. That is also a 4 o'clock kickoff. And then we have, the Valley Huskers traveling over to the Vancouver Island to take on the Raiders for a 5:30 kickoff for their home opener. And of course, as I mentioned a few times already this show, my broadcast debut, as my partner and I will be on the call. Noah Atnikoff will be on the play-by-play, and I myself will be the color analyst for that game and throughout this season. So looking forward to it. As I mentioned, guys, if you guys enjoyed, like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. You guys can find us on our social media platforms at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram, at _CF Fanatics on Twitter, and of course I will leave Wiz's and the BCFC's social media in the description below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed week number 4 in the BCFC, and we'll see you guys next week for Inside the BCFC week number 5.